Hi, this is Greg Rocky Marciano with Griswold Controls, and now we're going to go over the DW series valves. These are all brass valves. They start at 3/4 inch, 1 inch, 1.25 inch, 1.5 inch, and 2 inch. They have the exact same features as the 2000 series, to where they are a slow closing valve and also a continuously self-cleaning valve. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take one apart so you all can see what's going on here, and we're going to go over the different models as well too. So again, first thing, like I said, on the Model 2000, you want to open up your flow control all the way up. That way you take complete pressure off your cover spring. Unscrew your your bolts to the bonnet of the valve, and once you do that, and again I'm holding the bonnet down with my finger, and I do this out in the field as well too. Hopefully you will too. You pull the cover off, and you've got your cover spring. And make sure again you take the metering pin out first before you pull the diaphragm up. Because if you don't, what's going to happen is it's going to get stuck in there. But if you can't turn off the downstream side of the valve, you're going to get a gurgling effect, and this thing's going to go and it's going to get caught in the valve, or it's going to go downstream. So make sure you take that metering pin out first before you take the diaphragm out. Okay, let's talk about the diaphragm assembly. The diaphragm assembly is very similar to the 2000 series, except there's no O-ring. I've already loosened out my pin bearing. You unscrew that. You got your cover for your diaphragm. You got your diaphragm assembly, and then these are all the components to that diaphragm. It's a little bit easier, okay? But the big thing here with the DW series, and I really want to stress this, is that our diaphragms are gray. Now there are some black diaphragms out there, and there's some brown diaphragms out there, and the gray ones are the only ones that we use. Now, there are companies out there that sell parts, and they have repair kits, diaphragm repair kits for Griswold. Make sure that you get our diaphragm repair kits, because again, you're going to get a gray diaphragm in it. You're not going to get a black diaphragm. Griswold will not warranty if it's a black diaphragm. They will only warranty the diaphragm if it's gray. And that's the diaphragm assembly. And again, the pin bearing has the stainless steel insert in there. Now, on the Model DWS series, we also have the metal tag, and that has the model number of the valve, and it also has the SO number, or our sales order number. So if you call in, if you want to know what model, because I'm going to ask you what model valve you have, you can read it right off this tag. Okay. Again, the DW series does have a guide tube in there as well. The seat assembly is a little different, because this seat on the DWS series, that is actually casted into the body of the valve, so you can't remove this, only on the Model 2000 series valves. Again, this is strictly a globe valve, and this is a 2-inch valve. And again, you've got your direction of flow arrow. Look at these things and make sure that you're going in the right direction. Now, there is one issue that I get into as we're taking the valve apart and we've done our repairs, and we're now going to put the valve back together again. We put a new diaphragm assembly in. So you take your metering pin, and again, your metering pin goes in with the flat part down first. And again, in that guide tube, you have a spring, and we don't call it a cap in the guide tube for the DW series, we call it a spacer. But again, it's the same function. That metering pin has to be floating, and make sure that that spring and cap is in there. When you reassemble this, again, your cover spring. Now, before you put your bonnet assembly back on, check this O-ring to the side of the body of the valve. This is how you would reassemble the valve. So this is where your solenoid cavity is. Without that O-ring in there, what's going to happen is you may tighten down the body to the cover or the bonnet of the valve, but when you fire the valve, what's going to happen is this thing's going to start leaking and the valve will not open. You have to have that O-ring in there, okay? So again, what we've done here is we're going to reassemble it with our what we call in our parts catalog our cover screws. Make sure that you put the label back on the valve, because again, that's probably not going to be the only time you're going to get in this valve. You may, you know, again, our valves are meant to be repaired and not meant to be replaced. So, you know, again, you may be changing out diaphragms maybe every 6 or 7 years. So that's this part here. Okay, like the Model 2000, we have different models of the DW series. This is our DW series. This is our what we call our standard DW series. It does come with a low power solenoid, which is 0.075 amps. You can get the copper solenoid, and on our website we have the different model numbers on our price list, and we publish all of our price lists. So, and our parts pricing and our diagrams for both valves. So you can just go on our website, www.griswoldcontrols.com, and go under irrigation, and you can get all those components. You get all your pricing. Okay, then we go into, and again, right now we're still in a normally closed valve. Then we go into our pressure regulating DW series. Now, again, we've made a couple changes on our block assembly, and the reason I have this open like this is because we now have a swivel joint at the bottom. This is the way it used to look, and now you've got this swivel addition on it. So if you ever want to retrofit a valve in the field, you want to go from a straight DW series to pressure regulating. That's all you got to do is just buy this assembly, which has the pressure regulator on it, and then your solenoid, and here, but you have to take it apart to put this in. Make sure that you put the O-ring in there. If you don't, you won't get a good positive seal, and there's an O-ring at the bottom of this. Okay? And the new block assembly, you just thread this in. And again, it's going to be in the valve box, so it should be a little bit easier. Now, you have to tighten this swivel part here because we want it tight. We want the swivel to swivel, but we want this part here, the bottom part of the swivel itself, we want it tight. So you're going to have to get in there and get a wrench in there and tighten it down. Now, if you're doing this and the valve's not in the valve box, obviously it's going to be a lot easier. But in the valve box, you can do this. I just did it yesterday on a job. So again, so make sure that that swivel part is tight. Then what you would do is you would then go back and add your pressure regulator, and there's only one side that can go on. And then you would then take your solenoid, and this happens to be a low power solenoid, and you can thread it in. And again, this O-ring is in the bottom of the thread, so you don't have to add an O-ring into that. And if you're doing this out in the field, in the valve box, make sure your water's off, because obviously it's going to be a lot different if you have water going through the valve. And again, now I didn't tighten this base down, but we want that to swivel. Now if you don't tighten it down, what's going to happen is you're going to, and I don't know if you all can see that, but when I move this, the whole bottom part of this assembly moves. You're not going to get a good seal in there, and your valve won't work. It may not fire the first time. So if you are retrofitting, now we tighten them at the factory if you order it with a pressure regulator. But again, if you're retrofitting out in the field, make sure you tighten this down. I know I'm repeating myself, but again, I need to repeat myself, because a lot of times people don't hear me the first time. Okay, we also make a normally opened DWS valve. And the only difference is that you're going to have the normally open solenoid, and you're going to have a copper tube that is going to be going around the solenoid and attaching back into your side. You're going to lose your pressure regulator. Now, let's talk about the pressure regulator a little bit more. We do have two different bleed assemblies on this valve. We have an internal bleed here, and again, if you open up the valve internally with the internal bleed, you're going to bypass your regulation. So don't try to adjust your downstream pressure, because you have to turn it on electrically. Remember that. If you go, this is the other manual bleed. This one, again, this is external. This is going to bleed the atmosphere. So you bypass your pressure regulation. The only way you can adjust your downstream pressure is turn it on electrically through your controller. Don't forget to put your pressure gauge onto your Schrader valve, and then unloosen your set screw. And again, going down is going to increase your pressure. Backing it off will decrease your pressure. Really simple. Once you set it, go ahead and just tighten that nut down. And that's pretty simple. The normally open valve is not pressure regulating. It just comes normally open. And again, you're going to have your normally open solenoid, and the copper tube will be coming out of the top of the solenoid, wrapping around to the other side of the block assembly on the block assembly for the normally open valve.